warm welcome back to the Pinnacle Esports channel. Today we're back with the Pinnacle Stack. We're joined by Peacemaker. Peacemaker, how are you doing?
Doing great, fantastic. Happy to be here with you guys. I've watched a couple episodes and finally we made it happen, so I'm glad.
Do you know what? That's more than most of our guests usually do, so I'm glad you've actually seen some of the content.
Yeah. Get to
We
do my
appreciate
background,
it.
right, to see how things works and everything,
Yeah,
so I
we
did it
Oh
appreciate
yesterday.
no.
that. But we've got Brandon Hawker, the regulars on the show. Hawker, you've just been casting over in Sweden. We'll ask you about that shortly. And Brandon's here again. As you've seen on every episode, we've had
He's
Brandon, I
here.
think, as our consistent member. So not missed an episode yet. We'll see if we can finish off the year with that. But Hawker, how is it over in Sweden? How was the event?
I mean, it was very cold, I must say. That's that's where I'm starting. It was like -6. And like I was getting slightly ill and forgot to bring anything to protect my lips. So they look a bit beaten up right now. But yeah, it was a fun event, honestly. I'm glad we have some of these like smaller events back because there was a little crowd as well over in Jonkoping. We were in a studio, so we didn't get to see that, but you saw it on stream sometimes. I think it's pretty important for these teams to get that sort of experience. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Were there any teams there, players there that really stood out to you across the event?
I think so. Everyone was probably expecting VP to win this because they'd been really good online. I was kind of surprised that I don't think all the VP players really fully showed up. Like Norbert was playing really well, which was a big surprise. But then it was actually like Mir and Fame who were a little quiet. Didn't really see them have the same standout performances. And I think that was probably the biggest issue for VP, to be honest. Just a couple of their star players didn't show up, even though Norbert did. So that was a shame for VP. They went out in the semis. I think Monty still just looked really, really good. They just look like such a consistent team. So they went on to win it. I did feel bad for Eternal Fire because they played like a really long semi-final against MIBR. I'm sure that took so much out of them. And then they had to go and play the final on the same day. And that's always really hard. As soon as I saw that, I was a bit worried that they weren't going to have much of a chance to compete, but they still did all right in the final. I think Wakadia looks like a real solution for Eternal Fire. They found a new Turkish player who's giving them a lot of firepower. He plays like pretty aggressive with Zantares, actually. So it kind of feels like at times they live and die by what Zantares and Wakadia can do. And then maybe Major will come in with some set plays that can win them rounds. But it definitely feels like they're the two most important players on that team. And I think probably the reason Monty were able to win over any of these teams is I just feel like they have a little more consistency across the entire team. Like everyone is normally doing a solid job. And maybe for some of these other squads, there'd be one or two players that were a little quiet. But Monty just looked very well structured. Seems like everyone knows what they're doing. Bro, by the way, youngest player on the team, was great in the final. So that's really good to see. I think this guy could be really good in the future. So yeah, all in all, Monty just looked really solid. They actually kind of showed that their consistency is a cut above all these teams, which is really nice to see.
I think Monty as well. They've been in multiple semi-finals now. They had a finals appearance. You thought it was probably a matter of time before they did finally push it over the line and get that achievement. But as you mentioned, Eternal Fire, they've played back-to-back finals now at Parry Please, and unfortunately for them, they've lost out on both of them. Brandon, what's your take on Eternal Fire at the minute?
I think it's just a really interesting point what Hawker brought up about the fact that the rounds live and die by Xantares and Wicadia. I feel like it was always that you kind of had that triple threat. You had Woxic in there as well, but obviously CS2 with the adjustments to the AWP has always been a little bit difficult. I know updates are trying to find that solution, but I feel like the way that Eternal Fire have got now, they've got a blend. They've got a very aggressive plays, as you mentioned, Hawker, with Wicadia and Xantares, then suddenly you've kind of got the support network of, well, if this actually goes a little bit pear shaped, we've kind of got our backup plan of Major and Calix just trying to kind of steady the ship. And sometimes that can work, but I feel like in a lot of mid rounds, sometimes where things get especially chaotic, Eternal Fire, if they're not the ones creating the chaos, they really struggle in those mid rounds trying to just kind of reset mentally and get back into the rounds. And I feel like they've only kind of got sort of one kind of game plan. It feels like they don't have multiple different outs when they're looking at solutions into a round. Sometimes I feel like that does let them down when it comes to kind of these grand final games. And it was really good to see that from Monte, the fact that they're able to adjust and they're able to be that consistent. That was the one thing they were missing. Just kind of, they had the HLTV ranking, the consistency after Paris, the fact that they're able to now finally put a trophy in the cabinet has got to be such a enriching feeling for them. And hopefully it means that they can push on and they can keep doing it, because that was always kind of like the devil on their shoulder sort of thing that they were really lacking. And SDY, got to talk about his stats as well for that tournament, because it was like, I don't want to say life tournament, but that's kind of what it felt like when you
I
take a look
think
at the
he
numbers.
said
It was
live tournament
incredible.
himself
Did
in
he?
his
Oh,
tweet.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think even he acknowledged how good he played there. Is maybe just a little bit of a one-off, and who knows, maybe it'll happen again. But the one thing that it does allow them now is to take the pressure off, because that gives them their spot in Pro League for season 19. So they can now take the pressure off, and as Stiko was saying in the last podcast, you can play now without pressure, and maybe that helps them to win a few more tournaments, smaller tournaments that they're going to be playing in over the next few months before the major happens. So it's a really good place for them. Their ranking
Yeah.
boosts up as well, so it's another spot for them at major tournaments.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'd touch on is maybe Peacemaker can talk about this, but the semi-final between Eternal Fire and MIBR, I kind of felt like MIBR should have had that on a couple of times. Like, I feel like MIBR were playing better as a team, and I don't know, they just couldn't get it over the line. I don't know if it was an experience thing or a pressure thing, but yeah, that was unfortunate, because I think MIBR did actually play really well overall.
Yeah, I also think that they played really well, and I think that for this MIBR roster, I feel like they're in the same spot, kind of like Eternal Fire in some sense, that they are doing really great. They have the potential to like to win these big events or smaller events, and then grind from there. But for MIBR, like I agree with you completely. I watched that game, and I think that the result itself like speaks, right. Like we can see that they had two overtimes in that specific series on Vertigo, and then on Mirage as well, and then on that Vertigo game. Again, it's a very tight game, came down to very specific situations. Maybe I could have closed that out. But again, it's a map that for Eternal Fire, it's one of the best maps. I think, honestly, like from the teams that I watched, Eternal Fire is probably one of the best Vertigo teams in the world. Like they are consistently really good on it. They keep picking the map against everyone and they always deliver it. So it's not a surprise for me in terms of like how the veto went and what maps they ended up playing and how it went. But in general, it was just a very tight series. And surprisingly, like what we saw from IBR, not only in this event, but the last couple of fishes they had, is really nice for the Brazilian scene. Like giving you guys a little feedback from what I've seen in the Brazilian scene and what people are talking about. Like the MIBR guys, they're giving Brazilians the hope of, maybe a Brazilian team is going to get back into the top again. Everybody sees that. Everybody believes in this roster. And I think there is a few question marks that maybe we're going to talk about in this podcast more deeply about MIBR. But like overall, I think they have a great mixture. And it's nice to see the addition of Safe and Drop coming from Furia being questioned, both of them being really questioned as players, whether they could deliver or not. And then they come into this roster, I believe it was not even 6 months ago, right? And they managed to mesh really well. So, but yeah, the series was really tight. Ended up going into Eternal's Fire favor, but as you said, really well. Like it was just very, very tight. Came down to very specific situations and a lot of OTs in the end.
Because you mentioned him, I want to bring him up now. Actually, talk about
Mm,
Safe and the adjustment,
mm,
obviously from Furia to MIBR. It's very different play styles, and it's
yeah.
quite clear that it is suiting him a lot more. Do you reckon that's kind of he's currently in the best performance wise that he's given, and or would you prefer him maybe blending in a little bit of the old Furia aggression to kind of elevate MIBR?
No, I think that for Safe, I don't know exactly how it was in Furia. I could just tell that he was a little bit shy as an opera. Like I could tell that he was trying to make plays and trying to make moves, but I don't know if it's the system that Furia did back in the days that does require a lot of space for Art and some of the other players, and that made him a little bit shy as an opera, like not really making a lot of impact. And when I saw him in MIBR, I just feel that as soon as he joined, maybe it's just because he was one of the most experienced players that he come to this roster and everybody kind of expects him to perform and expects him to deliver. And I think as one of the most experienced players in this roster, he just had like relief that he knew he could just play his own game, that he could do his moves. And I think what we see from Safe right now is a little bit of what we saw from him back in the days when he was in Pain Gaming, where he basically everybody was talking about him as a potential upcoming opera in Brazil, like the substitute for Fallen and all the kind of narratives that was brought way back then. And I think we see some of that right now, and I think it has a lot to do with the way that Exit as an IGL controls the team, which, from my understanding, watching the game, it's very different than the way that Art controls his. And also, like just as something that I also heard in the back, like back in the background, like from players that usually played with Art, is that he's a very like he does require a lot of space, right? We all know that, but the way that he controls like the operas is a little bit different than the way that maybe some of the other IGLs do it out there, and it's not the best way that I like it as well. He tries to control a little bit too much how the op plays in his team, and I think it definitely affected Henny back in the days, which is, from what I heard, one of the reasons why he left the roster. And again, that probably also affected Safe and his impact and how he played in the team. And I just get this really like strong feeling that Safe just feels relieved that he can finally be himself and make impact for his team. So yeah.
Another player that I want to highlight because the reason that they've managed to go undefeated in their group is Insani. So,
Mm,
Peacemaker, I just want to get your thoughts on him. And I mean, the guy
mm.
is a superstar.
Yeah, Insane continues to be insane for sure. Like he's I mean, when I saw him the first time, it was in Katowice this year, early in the year, and I think that was the moment where everybody found out about him and everybody was talking about him. And it's pretty impressive because he came from the academy roster, right? It was, I mean, kudos to Bit, the coach who found him, and they raised that player. They did it really well. So a guy that comes out of nowhere with no experience, he played a couple events in Brazil, like online stuff, but nothing compared to what he's experiencing right now. And back in the days when he was popping off in Katowice, it was really impressive. Just purely the fact that it was his first big event and he was already capable of delivering. But at the same time, like when that happened, it got me a little bit scared that, with these young players, maybe it gets into their minds and then they lose a little bit of like, what they should keep working hard and all of that. And I think that I don't know if that was necessarily the case with Insani. He's definitely like he's not consistently insane, but he's good. He's good. Don't get me wrong, but he's not consistently insane. But he can be insane and carry games and actually win like important rounds or important matches for them purely like of how talented he is as a player. But I think just overall the roster changes, change of roles, and a little bit of that definitely affected the team in general, which is the reason why we haven't maybe talked way more about him over the last few months. But still, like now in this last tournament, again, he was playing really well. He's a just a very talented player, and for now at least, it's pretty nice to see that MIBR was able to maintain him in the roster. He's not getting poached by maybe the Furias of the world or something like that. He continues in MIBR. But it'd be nice. It would be nice to see that they continue with this roster because I think they have a lot of potential. Yeah, especially in Sunny, if he's able to get even more experience playing big events and continues to deliver. I think that's important for this roster. Yeah.
Yeah, I think consistency across a Brazilian team is the main thing to keep them all together for a long
Yeah.
time because the amount of times we'll just see
Yeah.
switch after switch. It's almost
Yeah.
like Eternal Fire we're doing, but hopefully that's a bit more solidified now they have Arcadia. Um,
Something about this actually, like this roster moves. I think for the Brazilian scene, I think there's an interesting topic to talk about this. It's just that I think people like the Brazilian scene in general, they saw how SK and Luminosity back in the days, what they did with their rosters. So back in the days, everybody saw that as soon as they had a problem with the roster, they would immediately go for a roster change, right? And then there's a lot of critique about that because that's the way they held it back in the days. And I think they were a bit too anxious about trying to fix their issues by changing players. And that got into like, then when people saw that, some of these Brazilian teams, it automatically goes into their minds that like, as soon as they have a problem, they start like seeking for whose fault it was. Oh, it was this player, so let's kick him from the roster, bring someone else, right? And then I think finally, I think people are starting to realize that maybe that's not the case. That they're learning how to deal with their problems in a way better way and stop making so many roster moves over and over again. at least we see a stable MIBR right now with this roster. And then we see Furia as well with a lot of critique. We're gonna talk about them for sure. We see them a lot of pressure and everything, but they continue with the roster, and I think that's important to give them time to mature and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I almost see like the Brazilian scene as like how the League of Legends teams do it, where they have one split and then they change like their entire team, and a
Yeah.
split is like a month or a month and a half. It's
Yeah.
wild, and they just decide to remake the entire team, and yeah, I just you can't get consistency from that. But
Mm-mm.
hey, LG and SK made it work for a brief period across their time. So yeah, but that has been what's happening across the ESL Challenger events, and as we say, that earns Monty their place in Pro League. So something that they don't have to worry about too much now. But another event that's just happened around the same time is Blastful Final, where we saw FaZe lose their win streak. I know as an NIP fan, I'm happy about that. I was getting a bit worried. Still far away, but still a bit worried. They could have done it definitely. So I just want to throw some kind of quick fire questions out to you guys about the event. There's a lot of unknown around what was happening there. You had Astralis attending with what everyone knew was a roster change or roster changes imminent. NIP had a new roster. You had Vitality with a new player. There was a lot of different changes that was happening. So I want to start this off, and I'll throw this over to you, Brandon. Can Wonderful be the star during Simple's absence?
Cool, yeah, throw me a really tough one to kick things off. All right, I hope
Mm.
this sets the tone for everything. Can, I don't. Can he be the star? Absolutely, he can. I just think you got to have the caveat of give him tier one experience because look, he was already playing really well. I feel like he had a very good debut event. Some people will say, "Hey, that's the honeymoon phase," but um, he's got a lot of potential for sure, and he's playing under a very experienced IGL. He's playing with teammates who have now got more tier one experience. They're not as raw. When JL and Imma came into the squad, you could argue that they were quite raw because the only big tournament they'd really played was the major. So now they're getting a consistent run in a tier one organization. That also by bringing in Wonderful quite quickly, you've now got JL and Imma that can actually turn to him and kind of be like, okay, well, we can show you the ropes because we've just kind of been through this process. And it's interesting kind of speaking in interviews and like listening to what the Navi players are saying because it feels like the atmosphere has shifted a little bit. Everyone's feeling a little bit more positive about things, whether that was because of Simple or not really too sure. But Alexi B has said that Wonderful is a nice guy to be around. He's very positive, has got a good outlook on the game. And that's exactly what you want out of a young player. You're now going into a team, as I said, with a very good IGL, one of the best coaches in the world when it comes to experience, when it comes to tenure, when it comes to knowing the culture of Navi as well. And considering that Wonderful's already said he doesn't want to be compared to Simple. He wants to be his own player. I think he's got all the qualities and the mentality to be one of those best players.
Yeah, and you definitely saw it with Bit, I think was the player that they were highlighting in the change of like attitude. I know Alexi B mentioned him. And yeah, he's looking great in CS2. He looked great at Sydney. He's looked great at Blast. So definitely keen to continue seeing how he improves and just how he keeps dominating on the server. So another question. um, I know Brandon's going to want to jump on this one. So do you know, Peacemaker, we'll throw this one to you. Do
Mm.
Cloud9 require another change? And if so, who would you target?
That's $1 million question. Because that team is well. First of all, I think that they did a good job with bringing Boombla back into the roster. I think we could. I mean, it was devastating for me to watch that roster with under Electronics IGL, and I'm not saying he was a bad IGL or anything, but you could just tell that right after this happens, as soon as they bring Boombla, you could tell by electronic numbers like how much he can contribute into the team in a different role with more freedom and not having to worry about the IGLing aspects of the game, right? He was insane during this tournament. Like I think he was like overall in all the matches they played, he was the best rating in probably majority of the matches.
I
So
think he was second highest across the whole event.
yeah, I mean that's pretty sick, right? And I mean that's the electronic we all know he's famous for. And yeah, I think that for now, I want to see what Brandon says about this, but like for now, I think that they do not require an AWPer, but in the future, like for me, it's challenging because I think Boombla is doing well with it. Like they can mess with it a little bit, and also because CS2 is still as it is right now. Like a lot of oppers are struggling with the game, and the op does feel a little bit like laggy. I don't know, like it's just weird, and people are not feeling 100% comfortable with it yet. And if Valve make changes to the game and brings the op back as it was, and then maybe people start to feel more comfortable with it, or they get up, or the op gets a buff or something like that, then that's where it gets tricky, because I do think that they will suffer against some of the best operas in the world, like the Zywus of the world, that type of operas. But it's just, we're still yet to see. It's too early. We need to see more of them. I need to see more, but I can see them struggling a little bit in that aspect. Not for now though. For now, I think they're fine. I think that the game as it is, they should be doing good, especially with Electronic putting up the numbers that it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think that they don't need to make a change right now,
Mm.
but I could see, like you said, like in a few months. I mean, I want to see how Hobbit does because I think he's getting more roles where I expect him to frag a little bit better now. And I didn't really see that at this event. So I think you give him a few events, but he's the player I'm mainly looking at. And then to
Yeah.
be honest, depending on who you could get, like if there's an obvious upgrade, there's just a lot of talent in the region. So I even think some of the star players aren't like guaranteed to me on this lineup. Like I think Axai was pretty good at this tournament, but there are a lot of good riflers out there. So I think I agree. I like where they're at. I think Boomich is giving them like pretty solid structure, which is important. And I think that's going to allow us to see if they need to make a roster move or not.
What are your
You want me
thoughts,
now?
Brandon? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, go on.
Okay. I agree completely. And to be honest, I can't really add too much more because uh, Peacemaker summed it up perfectly. The state the game's in now, why not experiment? Why not try
Yeah.
and set a meta? We've got the first CS2 major on the horizon, and given the way that obviously Valve are making changes, I don't actually think they're going to make too much to the AWP currently. So play with 5 AKs. The only thing I will say is that we saw a different Cloud9, obviously, compared to what we saw when we watched them at Thunderpick. Boomwich was open a lot less on Thunderpick, and I actually think that was a lot more effective. I feel like Cloud9 need to realize that they don't have an AWPer, but so therefore you don't need an AWPer. You've made that roster change in the first place. Why not experiment with this 5 rifles, especially in the state that the game's in? So I'd like to see Boomich rifle a lot more rather than prioritize the AWP. Um, to be honest, but outside of that, yeah, I completely agree. No roster changes needed. Give them some time, see how it works. And it's crazy to me that the most craziest thing about this is the fact that we're saying Axel had an all right event when obviously it was Axel's one of the best riflers in the world, and it's kind of
Yeah.
sad that we're there, and
It is a
hopefully he can
shame.
bounce back. Yeah,
I will say, like, the other point is obviously they were like so close to beating Vitality. Like the first map
exactly.
was overtime, the third map went the full distance in regulation. I think they probably overperformed slightly in both those maps. They probably won a couple of rounds. I didn't think they should have, but it's
Yeah,
still
that's
like a
fair.
really good sign. Obviously, that, like competing that close against Vitality.
It's just safe to say that if they do go for a roster change, that Hobbit should be on the line, right? For that roster
Yeah,
change, right? Like it just everybody knows, and he probably knows himself that if they go, he will probably be the one, the chosen one, just because like Exile has been insane throughout the years and just the roster they have. But yeah, for now, I think they, as you guys said it very well, they keep it as it is. But it is always like I think this is gonna hunt Hobbit for a little while until they deliver results and maybe they win a small event or they keep doing great as they did in this one or even better. I think it's gonna be a little tough for Hobbit to stay mentally focused all the time because he just knows that if something happens, he's probably the one going right.
I have a hot take
Yeah.
on this.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
I don't actually think it would be Hobbit.
Okay.
The only reason why I'm saying that is because think about the journey that this team has been on through Gambit youngsters, through Gambit as well, and then coming over to Cloud9. Hobbit's been the most experienced player on this team the entire time. He's probably got a deep rooted connection as well with Groove and understands how Groove wants the best out of him. and he can be that guy, kind of similar to um, just other experienced players on different rosters where he just kind of integrates them in. You can see the mentality the guy has as well, and he's got like very good vibes for the team. So I would actually be interested to see if it would be him moving. I think for those reasons he might not. I guess who goes at that point, I don't know, but I'm just saying you've dropped Shiro, you're willing to do that. Wouldn't surprise me if they're willing to drop Axel as well later down the line
Mm.
and bring in Donk.
Okay.
Donk.
Sounds great.
You've already managed to slip them in. We're not even at that topic of conversation yet. I respect it so much, Brandon. This is a level of dedication we're yet to see. So
I do
yeah,
actually agree with that Hobbit thing though. Like I do think like maybe because of that journey they've been on and like the amount of experience the guy has, obviously winning a major as well. Like I don't know. Now the Shiro thing was so unpredictable that the Cloud9 can make any roster move at this point.
it just seemed to be going closer and closer towards that old Navi lineup that won the major. So maybe
Yeah.
they'll just end up simple win for Hobbit. I think yeah, definitely Hobbit is going to be the move. I had him in my fantasy team for this event, so I noticed his performance quite a lot, and it wasn't great.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
That was great.
yeah. I was looking at him quite angrily on my screen, but yeah, Cloud9. I think they have so much talent on that team. I'm hoping that they continue as a like a five riflers. I think it's really interesting to see if that could work. There's so much in the game that needs fixing before you go to look at the AWP. So yeah, definitely a very interesting point. Walker, I'm going to throw this one to you. So we've seen the rumors coming out already about Liquid having already, put pen to paper on their signings, which was allegedly going to be Twists, Cadian, and Skulls. So my question is, do you think this is the last time that we see this phase lineup?
Ooh, let me look at what they're scheduled to play. But
They
No,
are
you can't do that.
attending the
That's
Blast
cheating.
World Finals.
what do you mean that's cheating? That's not cheating. Okay, so
I think they've got one more
that's-
event. this year.
yeah, in December. Oh,
Oh, that's a world final, right?
yeah. I don't know. Maybe I actually have no idea on this. I'm literally just completely in the dark, throwing darts at a board. It feels like it would make sense for Twist to play the world final, right?
Yeah,
I
it
think
would.
I think he'll play the world final. Because then you have like you go into December. The only thing is, I think the RMRs are like in February, so
I
it
think they
would
even
give
start as early as like the qualifiers for them start as early as like January. It's
it would give
crazy.
like a really short time for Liquid to get up to speed. But I think if you're Twist, you probably just want to play out the world final, right? Like FaZe still look like they could win that. So yeah, I think we'll see him there. I don't know if anyone else has a better opinion. I'm just guessing.
Another question, I guess, is do you think
just moves
that
on?
Jake-
It just asks the next one.
No. This is on the topic, on the same topic. Sorry,
Okay.
on the same topic. But like, do you think the replacement for Twist is JKS? Do you think there's anyone else out there that?
I don't know if JKS like role wise. I don't know if that actually
Because
fits.
I know Frozen was thrown about a few podcasts ago when we were speculating.
Frozen would be
Brandon
great. I
brought that up.
don't know if you get him though.
Especially that close to the
I mean,
World Finals.
Yeah, it's just we're so confused about like FaZe in general with the whole I don't know the complexity stuff or whatever that apparently is going on. So I don't know what they're doing. Like I can predict players that I would like if I had loads of money and was FaZe.
So who
But
would
I
your
don't know if
top
they're
choice be
actually going to
then?
be in that position. Wait, sorry, what did you say?
Who would your top choice be?
I would be Frozen.
Would
If
be
you can get
Frozen.
Frozen, I think he's just so good. But he's also on a very good team. So
Yes.
And probably with a very high buyout.
yeah.
So
I mean, the reunition of Frozen and Rops would be something very special. I think we'd all be quite happy to see that. Yeah, but do you guys think this is going to be something where FaZe are going to continue for Blast World Finals, and then that might be the change? I mean, for me, I'm confused why they're still even thinking about making the change with the start they've had. I'm not even sure
Yeah.
they expected the start.
I have a take on this. I think that for Twist and for Liquid in general, like if they manage to bring this project, they're already missing out a lot of time, right, before the qualification, the major qualification, and all of that, to be able to build the team and build the structure around the team because it's not they're gonna have a Brazilian guy in the team who's gonna be it's gonna be his first international experience as well if Schools is confirmed in the roster, and then they bring Twist, who comes from FaZe with a lot more experience than back in the days when he was in Liquid. So Cadian from Denmark, and then Zeus as a coach, a Brazilian coach. I think there is a lot of personalities, a lot of like ways of thinking about the game that might require some time for them to be on the same page and how they want to play and how they want to use the players. And I think that when they build this project, I really don't believe that they are aiming for this measure. I think it's more like in the medium long term. So it wouldn't surprise me if Liquid comes with a narrative of like, yeah, I mean, we built this project. It would be unfair for Twists to leave his team prior to such a big event, and then just allow him to play. And they would come with a narrative of like, now when everybody is free, then we're gonna start practicing. We're gonna do a boot camp next year, and then see how it goes in the first major. But our goal is for the remaining of the year, right? I think that's the narrative. When you build a team like that, and if you bring with you expectations of like delivering or having to qualify for the major and having to do great, even though you have these pieces, I think it would be a little bit crazy, right? When you see all the other teams making moves before that and grinding and trying to make things work, and then they come with such high expectations, it would be little bit weird for me. So I think I think that's what they're aiming for. Yeah.
So, because of the amount of changes that we've seen, the amount of teams that have like almost fallen apart with two players leaving, how many teams do you actually think are looking at this major and going, "That's what we're targeting with this roster"? Do you think there are many?
That's a hard one. I think that it's hard. Like I would say, FaZe obviously would aim for like winning this if they kept the roster. But right now, I think everybody is just like I think everybody just is just gonna treat this major as obviously learning and how to play it with each other and developing a map pool and blah 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 and like kind of experiencing things. It's just so hard. Like obviously the teams who are not gonna make roster changes, for example, Mouse Vitality as well, who did great and just won an event. I think Vitality and Mouse could be great examples of teams that would come into this major with high expectations. Other than that, honestly, like if FaZe makes a roster move, ENCE already did, Complexity is doing great as well. Complexity could be a team that maybe they have expectations of at least making to the playoffs, considering what they're showing right now. But other than that, like I think it's too short period of time, and plus, like as we spoke about, the major qualification starts in January, and then I think the RMRs are in February or March or something. And then who knows if G2 is gonna make any more changes or not. And then I think it's hard. I think it's really hard. It's a very short period of time for teams to be stable. So again, what we saw in Paris might happen again. That we see a lot of upsets and a lot of weird results in that sense.
Yeah, that would be a shame as well to start CS2, but it's just again weird because like the major isn't at the end of that season. It's like it's in March, and then you have like loads of tournaments after.
Yeah.
So you don't, I don't feel like you get the full like build up time for teams, which is kind of a shame. I guess the only upside for Liquid is if you go back to being American, the NA qualifiers should be way easier, right? You get through the NA qualifiers at least should be fine. The RMR actually, there are some South American teams that are pretty decent, so
Yeah.
that could maybe be a little more tricky. But they actually still have 4 spots from their RMR, and there's only 8 teams there. So if you get to the RMR, you'd think Liquid would feel pretty good to at least make it to the major. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's still only like basically 3 months to build your team up, which isn't really enough when you're making such big changes.
Yeah, and there's not too much happening around it for teams to build their ranking up either. So the seeding when it actually comes to the major might be a nightmare. And we've seen it in the past with,
Yeah.
you'll have two of the teams that you could probably see as finalists actually match up in the first round. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens around the major and what teams' expectations are going into it. We've already seen like the likes of Falcons, if their team comes about beforehand, they've said it's definitely not Copenhagen. They'd love to win it, but I think most teams will have that same mentality. We'd love to win it, but we know our team is going to be very young, and we'll have to see how that happens. Hawker, I'm going to come back to you with a question, and then we'll go all the way back round. So Charlotte's made their change, and everyone is a bit confused because they thought Buzz would stay. So the question to you really is just, Would you have picked Stir or Buzz to stay in that lineup?
Yeah, that's tough again. I think it's pretty close between them. So I would basically put it that I think Stare probably does have more potential. When I watch him play, I feel like he does have a big upside. But Buzz was probably a bit more of a stable player. And to be honest, with the players you've brought in, I don't know if you need to have the risk of Stare being a little more inconsistent. Like you have enough firepower now on this roster. I think I probably would have just stuck with Buzz, to be honest. It just seems like he's a pretty good glue guy. Everyone seemed to like him. He's meant to be like the support player on the team. He's going to be the lowest fragger. So yeah, I'd have just stuck with Buzz because I don't think there's too much between them. And I just think Stare, when I watch him play, he's so inconsistent. Like sometimes he looks really good and he has this snappy aim, and then sometimes he will just go completely missing, and that does scare me a little. So I think I would have stuck with Buzz.
Brandon, have you got any takes on the Astralis moves?
Main thing for me with this is it was always going to be Buzz going, and the reason why is think about how long in the news it was circulating that Astralis always wanted Stare, but they never got Stare. So like
Yeah,
Stare's been in the pipeline and the framework for years, and they've taken a chance on him and they want to stick it out with him. Not being funny, if Stare doesn't perform in this roster where you've got lots of superstars around him, okay, that's when it's his time to go. But I feel like he's been part of the Astralis kind of project for quite a while now, like with their vision. Also, role changes. He came from Sprout coming into Astralis, plays a lot of different roles, and doesn't really look comfortable. Don't think he's ever played those roles, especially getting now tier one experience, which he didn't have before. So I feel like now you've got Yamin Down being introduced. That's going to mean that roles will clash and roles will change again. So hopefully he gets some of his old Sprout ones back and we get to see Stare as he was in tier two.
And another player that's going to be, well, has been newly introduced in a very successful first event, Mezzi. Brandon, what's your first impressions on him? I know the sample size is very, very small, but first impressions for the event. What did you think of Mezzi?
All right, try not to be biased.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah, look, he did well. To be fair, like did his job right. I don't think he's not there to be um the standout carry. He's just there to kind of fill his roles, do a good job, dependable pair of hands. And that's exactly what he signed Mezzi. That's what you're going to get with Mezzi. And event to event, he's going to be feeling more comfortable and focusing on his crosshair more and putting up better numbers. And he's not going to be the like for one that you want out of when you swap out Magisk. And you probably, if you're Vitality, you don't want to lose Magisk, but you've gone for probably the best replacement you could find in Mezzi on the market. And I think it's really good for his career. The fact that they've already won a trophy and he's now got a little trophy next to his name for the first time, that would be a good feeling for him. So, yeah, they're going back to your point about the major, they're definitely like the back to back. It definitely is possible for them, I think. So, I've really good signing. Very impressed.
I was like not confused, but surprised that Messi actually hadn't had one of those little badges under his name on HLTV. I thought he must have won a tournament just based on some of the numbers he puts up, but then I thought back of some of those Fnatic rosters, and yeah, it reminded me why he might not have. I'm gonna throw the probably the hardest one of the lot to you, Peacemaker, and the last question surrounding Blast.
Great.
So Xiphon has just extended his loan from was it Sprout he was on? Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
Sprout.
Yeah.
So now the four players, Tessa, Shush, Dupree, Xiphon. Do you think, because they would be playing at Blast, the World Finals as well, do you think that there's an IGL currently available that you could slot into those four and actually make them a semi-competitive team?
That's a tough one, yeah. Right now available like in Denmark, I think it seems very tricky, right? Because Ains just signed Glaive. Glaive would be the obvious choice for me, even though he's been out of the scene for quite some time. Maybe reuniting with Dupree, I think that would make most sense for me. But right now, I think it is very very challenging. Like you would have to go for a very unexperienced IGL from one of these smaller teams like Ecstatic or whatever in the Danish scene, and that's tricky. Like at this point, obviously, I don't know how much Dupree could contribute to that because what I noticed from this heroic roster when they're playing is that Dupree is talking a lot and he's controlling a lot of stuff. So I don't know whether he could be capable of calling just for this event or until they are able to actually figure out what's going to happen in the future. I think it would make most sense for them to just go for a change like this, keeping the roster as it is, bringing someone else, and then like keeping either Dupree. I think it has to be Dupree, honestly. Like I saw some narratives about Sush becoming an IGL at some point. I think I heard rumors about it, but knowing him and having coached him, he's a more like introspective guy. He has grown a lot and matured a lot as a player and individual as well. But you can just tell that he doesn't have that leadership personality, such as Apex, for example, who's gonna be screaming a lot around, blah blah. Like it would be such a massive difference between going from Cadian to a guy like Shush. I would rather just see like Dupree taking the helm, and trying to IGL just for the time being, and then until they figure out what they're gonna do with the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like you just want to get basically the best fifth player that you can
Yeah.
and just, pick someone, probably Dupree, to sort of cool. The other players can give him some ideas as well. Like you said, I think like Shush can probably come with some ideas, but he's never going to be that big leader personality. One of the reasons why I think he's so good as a support actually is because he's pretty quiet. He's happy to just do his own thing. So that's probably your best bet if you're heroic, but it's obviously not a great position to be in.
I'll
Sorry, go
jump
ahead,
in.
Brandon.
Yeah,
We have a little
so
for context as well. Quickly, we have a little hands up system for Brandon and I. So because he's lagging during these calls, so if I'm leaving space, that's Brandon for the viewers out there.
yeah, that's my bad. Right, we can look at this in different ways for heroic. I think if phase go completely boom, get Carrigan. Um, there's an easy one. I think you could. I wouldn't have Dupree IGL in. I'd have him second call in, and I'd have Tess IGL in. Because apparently, just from like hearing like interviews and stuff that they've been saying, like Tess has been getting very vocal, and it's like, okay, well, if you want to be that hype man, why don't you get him in like IGL? You get Dupree focusing more on like mid round, like second round calling maybe, and he can be the guy that like steadies the ship in some rounds where things go a little bit wrong. You can have like a hybrid. I don't know how that works. I'm just making things up, but there we go. And I think you look for an AWPer, and AWPers you could get. I was trying to find one before we got to me, but I'm kind of struggling. Um, but yeah, why not take a chance on like one of the Danish AWPers? Why don't we not get
Yeah, Nico does on a loan,
Nico
maybe.
does is on
He's
the
or
willing.
line. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe I don't. I think Nikodos could work because I feel like he'll do well in like a Danish lineup because obviously he didn't quite work on Fnatic, but that was his first international venture, so maybe it's just a case of that. Um, we
What
could
about Farley?
go no.
Wow.
I'm saying this because like his name has been around the Danish scene forever, and the last time I'm checking his stats actually, like it wasn't that bad the last time he played for Copenhagen Flames. The problem is that the last official he had was in June, but he was putting up some good numbers for the ex Flames roster, and ever since that he just disappeared. I don't know, but he like his stats looks pretty solid. I don't know if he has been playing CS2. I think the obvious choice would be Nikodos or someone else like more experienced and who's active in the market. But I don't know. Maybe if they could go for like a Swedish opera, just because like maybe they could speak Danish. The guy could speak Danish as well. That could maybe be an option because other than Nikodos, I don't really see. I don't know if you guys do see any other possibilities for the spot.
I mean,
If only
there's
MSL was still around,
Oof.
I would get MSL in. Why not?
Oh yeah, I don't know. Maybe Chiquinho speaks Danish. Get him. I don't really like the idea of Farley just because I feel like he's inconsistent. I tell you who would actually. I think I would like to get a shot at tier one again because I feel like the circumstances weren't quite right for him when he came in. Maybe Lucky, give him a go
see
Okay.
a
because I
few
feel I
minutes
feel
ago,
like
Espionage did just complete their lineup with Mister, so
Oh, really?
yeah. Well, that's fine.
so they're
That's not
already getting
lucky.
rid of one.
So like no, but like I don't know. Like I feel like for storyline as well. Like I feel like Lucky didn't actually get like a fair like shake of the stick at tier one because of everything that was going on with Astralis at that time. So Same could be said for a lot of Stratus people that got signed at that time. But I would say, yeah, Lucky might actually just be an interesting one. Or yeah, you could bring Farley, or I don't know, Baby Bear from Sky could come and AWP for a bit. There's lots of options.
Yeah, I think we saw when Astralis lost device that they really struggled to find that AWPer that. I mean, it's hard to be on devices level, but just any AWPer that could replace, fit in that team and work. So Danish AWPers maybe not available. I like the idea of Swedish AWPers if Nork could
Knock.
be a good shout if he
Yeah.
speaks Danish. But
Yeah.
besides Nork, Swedish AWPers they're non-existent. So, well, I mean, Draken just got benched or left whatever team he was playing for. So you could experiment with Draken if you want to take that risk. But
No, he
um,
got benched from IPLA, didn't
I
he?
can just put Cloud9 at this point. They just go 5 rifles, right? Why not?
You
yeah,
could,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, you
exactly.
could.
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of good Danish talent. The thing is, as well, it's funny that like most IGLs at the top end are Danish, and yet we're still sitting here struggling to like identify an IGL that could work for this team. I think the thing with Heroic as well, it's whether they do stick it out because Heroic have got they've got Xiphon on loan, so I imagine that's to the same extent that Dupree's is, which is a temporary contract until the end of the year. So if that is the case, they only have 2 players come January, like that
Oh,
actually signed onto the org.
imagine if Snappi doesn't go to Falcons and he goes to Heroic.
Oof.
I have a hot take
That'll be
on
a
this.
plot twist right there.
I have a hot take on Snappi. That
Okay,
is
go on.
so. I was trying to brainstorm when we were having these like massive speculative discussions on roster moves with the Falcons discussion. And one of the things I think could work, and why I think it might be even more likely now, is for G2 to take him. I think G2 should snipe that deal completely. I don't see a world where that isn't an improvement after you've just changed JKS for Nexa. I think that's really odd. Surely that's not the only move. And it's also the fact that Saw has also left. Why would Saw leave with Snappi if Falcons already have Zonic? So maybe minus Swanee, minus Hixie, and G2 take those 2.
Hmm.
That would be my suggestion. But
And Hooksy can
I
go
definitely agree
Heroic.
with you.
would you say sorry, Brandon?
Hooksy can go Heroic.
Yeah, you can lead Heroic. Yeah, that could definitely be the move. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is completely off topic, but Peacemaker, what do you think about like I can't remember who I saw say it, but it was someone. It was an article about IGL coach duo being like your bread and butter at the minute, everything you need. So do you think that could be a good move for G2 if that was the case?
Oh yeah, I definitely think that it could be a good move. One thing is for sure, like I really think that Snappi and Saul they are definitely sticking together. I think it is like obviously I have to say that it's a downgrade for Saul to be like Zonic's assistant coach. Don't get me wrong, like obviously working for a big organization, earning tons of money for sure, and then having a great roster, that's all really nice. But Saul has the ability to coach any of these teams that we're mentioning, Heroic, G2, and it would make a lot of sense. It would be a upgrade for G2 for sure, having a coach like Saul in the team plus Snappi. Like in terms of firepower, don't get me wrong, like Snappi is better than Hooksy in terms of firepower right now. I just don't know, like in terms of building the structure around the team, if you would have the freedom that he had with Ents, just because like he managed to build different rosters with less experienced players, and in G2, I'm sure he would get a little bit more challenges, because Nico very experienced, way more experienced than himself, and very vocal. And then you have Hunter and Monesi, like they're not the type of players that Snappi is usually working with. That's why it's challenging. This move is also a little bit tricky. Going to Falcons and having a Danish coach is tremendously helpful and very important, because otherwise I could see Snappi struggling a little bit depending on what type of players they get, personalities and all of that. I think that's the biggest and most tricky part about all this. But answering your question straight to the point, yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense for G2. It would be an improvement. Now, whether that would work or not, time would have to tell you.
I think you're actually very right with I really like what you said about Zonic there, because I
Yeah.
think anyone that goes to Falcons, like, they're going to respect Zonic massively. So as long as Zonic and Snappi get that good working relationship, yeah, that's going to help so much if you get big names on this team. So I like that. I think you're right about Saw, especially because the scary thing is, I feel like as a coach you can get forgotten about like surprisingly quickly. Like the fact that Zeus is only now coming back towards top teams,
Yep.
when he was doing crazy good work for a long, long time on Liquid, on obviously Luminosity back in the day. Then on EG, I know it went badly towards the end, but there was a time when he was doing great work for them. And then he tried to go regionally for a bit. And to be honest, I don't think he had the players to really make a top team. And I think it's really different coaching a top team and coaching an up and coming team. And so like it's scary as a coach. Like you have one move that doesn't go well, suddenly maybe you get forgotten about. I'm glad that Zeus has found his way back, but for Saw, I just hope a year from now he's still in a position where if he wanted to coach someone again, he had that opportunity. Because yeah, sometimes I feel like you just get forgotten about as a coach. It kind of sucks.
I think it really comes down to what they are able to deliver in that project. If they do great, and then there's narratives and interviews and all of that, people talking
Yeah.
about the relationship between Zonic and Saul, how they complement each other, blah blah blah. Then yeah, if he stays like in the in the hotline, like everybody talking about it, blah blah. Then yeah, if he gets forgotten and everybody's all about Zonic and Snappy, then I think it could be tricky. Yeah, I agree with you completely, Hawk.
If you were in that position, Peacemaker, would you be happy to take that almost demotion to assistant if the team, like if you almost had that guarantee that the team would be very successful?
In my position right now, I would 100%. But, but if I was in Saul's shoes, if I was in Saul's shoes, no, 100% not. Like I think that Saul would for sure like. I think it's challenging for him. It is probably hard. It was probably a decision that honestly I refuse to believe that the only offer those two had was Falcons. I think they definitely had more opportunities. So the point that you made of them maybe joining G2, maybe that's something that already has been discussed and we don't know yet. But I think if I was them, if I was him, I would try to I would try to stick into the tier one scene as a head coach and try to develop and get one of these rosters. Like, who knows? Like, I don't know if a coach like Saul would have opportunities such as, for example, coaching the phases of the road. Yeah, I know Neo is there, he's doing great and all of that, but nothing compares to a coach like Saul, right? Like, don't get me wrong, Neo has been doing great, but Saul is just on another level right now, and he deserves that praise. It's just like there's these coaches like Saul, Blade, Robin, and then Zonic, that if they're out there, you just have to kind of like consider that for sure. If you are a top team willing to improve with players that needs to develop and all that, they're all proven coaches, their capabilities of doing that. So Saul would definitely, if I was Saul, I would definitely try to aim for that, even though it would be hard to get away from Snappy. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I think for me, I think a lot of the things I've seen is that people think that the Nexa move for JKS is a bit weird, just like pound for pound. So I don't know. I feel like maybe that's not the only move. It seems like it shouldn't be almost. It's not too much going on there if that is the only move. But hey, we'll see how they do at CCT Online Finals, which great segue for Brandon to give us a bit of talking points about that and what's going on there. Sorry, it's not on. Is it
Yeah,
Online Finals or is it East Europe?
yeah. Online Finals 5.
Online Finals.
Yeah, so I think the reason why I wanted to talk about this in particular is just because I think it's really interesting that they would have had invites to all of these previous online finals before, and they just haven't done it just to probably either tournaments clashing or they didn't think it was like kind of worth their time. But I really like the fact that G2 they picked up Nexa. They've recognized we don't have many tournaments left in this calendar year. We need to start getting reps and experience as much as we can. So let's just take the tournament. What I will say is when you take a look down the list at teams that are attending this event, G2 is obviously the most noteworthy name. You throw in big, and that is it. You've got some very good teams here as well, such as Aurora, such as Guild Eagles, and Fluxo. I mean, Fluxo, I know they've changed their roster again. I'm just looking at it now. I feel like this team changes its roster again like every couple of months.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, we can talk about that in a minute. But I feel like if G2 don't win this event, it will be a massive disappointment for them and just the community in general. Um, if not them, then Big. Like that's who I expect to win this tournament. Um, and yeah, I'm glad they're getting the experience. I'm glad they're getting the reps in because it's clear that they do need it with Nexa coming in so soon, and that'll be an interesting one. And I'm glad we don't have to wait too long to actually see that one develop.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And yeah, CCT Online Finals, the going to be a good time to see G2. I'm glad that we get to see them before the end of the year because they're not at World Finals, are they? So definitely going to be a very very interesting time for them. I think they have to win it with the level of their team above all else. But you can find the odds for all of that over on the Pinnacle Esports Hub as well. So you
I
can
think
check
they
it
are
all
a
out
World
in there.
Finals. I'm just looking.
They are
Looks
at
like
World
they are.
Finals.
Yeah.
No, but they're pretty sure
Okay,
they
cool.
are. Yeah.
So gives them a bit of time to prep then and get next
Yeah,
locked
maybe
into
a
that
warm-up.
lineup. This is definitely going to be a great warm up event then for the caliber of teams that they'll have to compete against at
Yeah, they
World
are though.
Finals because it that greatly increases. So yeah, event that begins tomorrow at the time of recording this. I think the video should go out tonight, but it starts tomorrow at time of recording. Is Elisa, which is over in Finland. Um, we get to see Ents with their new changes, but a lineup that I'm interested in, Fnatic. I slightly got this roster, or one of the players leaked to me a bit yesterday, because we played against Mattis in the last season of Open, and he absolutely dominated all of us. The guy is insane.
In open.
Yeah, in Open
He was
last
playing
season,
open.
we played him. I was playing with the Bin Men actually, so shout out to them.
Oh yeah, shout
Brandon's boys.
out.
He absolutely dominated us. So yeah, he is insane. But Brandon, I feel like a lot of these players will be players that you're familiar with. So I just want to chuck over to you and what your thoughts are about this new Fnatic lineup.
Oh, this is a cool lineup. I'll tell you what, I really like. I know the rumors of Fnatic about going back to Swedish, and I felt like you couldn't change. Obviously, they're changing a lot of players. You'd have to also get rid of Afro. What I really like is Fnatic have actually stuck to this European roster, and they're giving youth a chance, right? Also blending in experience. I like the fact the body has kind of revived his career, but I feel like the stint on ITB has done him a world of good as well. That would have definitely kind of got his stock increased and valued a lot higher because ITB went on a massive winning streak with him in the lineup, and ITB had been missing kind of a competent caller for quite a while. They had stints with Kickert, they brought Thomas back for a bit, then they landed on Body as a stand-in, and he played fantastically. So I'm all for the Body revival. I'm on that train. Afro, look, Body and Afro have played together before as well under Double Pony. Get him shining the way that Afro did before in the tier 2 scene. That's really cool. Fnatic can be playing a ton of tier 2 tournaments as well to get this experience with this roster. People that might not be aware of probably would be QB. And QB, extremely young prospect. I think he's 18 years old, played for Sangao. And this guy who's been playing on Sangao for the best part of 2 years and was one of the standouts for me when I was watching them at the RMR for the major they qualified for. I think it was they're playing Rio. I think it was like they were playing there and they were trying to make it through. Had some really close games, and that was at the hands of QB. Very aggressive rifler. Has got a lot to learn, and I've spoken to him a couple of times. He's got a very good mentality, so I'm glad he's got that opportunity to go there. And yeah, Matties is a beast. I know Beastick thinks really highly of him. Um, and Beastick has always said, look, if we could get Matties on Sinners, we'd be a completely different level. He genuinely thinks that this guy is like top 20 in the world. Like that's the potential Matties has got, which is incredibly high praise. But he's been showing it on Sampi. Unfortunately for Sampi, they've kind of been a little bit on decline over the last sort of couple of months or so. But throw it back to kind of start and middle in portions of 2023 before CS2 came out. These guys were owning in CCT. Like they were just winning everything. And um, that was at the hands of Matties. It was Matties and it was Savannah, but it was Matties in particular that was putting up ridiculous ratings. Like, um, very impressed. So I'm excited to see them, and I'm really happy and thankful for Fnatic that they are giving youth a chance.
Yeah, dominating in CCT and Open. So definitely high praises to give them there. There's a lot of good. I think this event is going to be very good in terms of the teams that you have there and how competitive it may be. Group A, definitely the weaker of the two groups, considering we don't know anything about Fnatic, and Havu are like 100 ranks lower than every other team there. So Ents in that group along with Gamer Legion. Do you think this is like a perfect opportunity for Glaive to just give himself a spot in this team to establish how he wants to call and everything else that he needs to do? I think they play Havu in the first game. Yeah, they do. So yeah, how do you think Glaive is going to adapt to this, and how do you think how we're going to see him in Elisa Hawker?
Yeah, seems like a pretty easy start for him. I mean, even Gamer Legion, they were actually at Jonkoping. I just didn't touch on them because they went out in the groups. They did actually have a kind of hard draw. Like they lost against MIBR and VP. So I'll give them some props. Those aren't easy games. But yeah, it's a pretty easy group. I think the the funny thing, just on the Fnatic lineup, it's just so weird seeing Crims on that lineup with like all these up and coming players. Like it fully looks like a really exciting online rising team, and then Crims is still there, which I love. Yeah, I think I actually like the Fnatic moves as well. I feel like maybe not all the players will like pan out, but surely like one or two of them will. So that'll be exciting, but very early, obviously. Yeah, I think it's also just great. I like that we have one of these events on and also not on at the same time as like a blast or something. Because Jean was cool, but I think a lot of people might not have seen that because it was overlapping. This is like everyone's going to be watching this for this week. It's going to be, I think, a lot of fun because of that. Like you said, though, that Group B. I'm sure Peacemaker will be a little sad looking at it because
Yeah.
I know FURIA, have been up and down, and that's a very hard group to get out of.
Yeah, yeah, it is a very hard group to get out of, and I mean, it's pretty safe to say that in that group B, straight up, like I just see Mouse probably winning the group or making it to the playoffs for sure. And then I think it really comes down to, I mean, Apex ever since they did the move as well, like the roster changes after the major. I just think that they lost the coach, they lost players as well, and I just think that ever since that happened, they never get back into that type of shape that they showed at the major. So they don't really scare me that much. I don't think they will make it to the out of the groups, to be honest. But when it comes down to Fury and Complexity, like on paper right now, I have to be honest, right? Like Complexity is playing a lot better than Furia, and they surely deserve the spot. But the thing is that these two teams, right, Fury and Complexity and Fallen and his teams, like they played against Complexity so many times with spots on the line at the major qualification and all of that. That for me, it does give me the feeling that every time they play against each other, there's always mind games and it's always tight series, and that's on land as well, which is a plus factor. And I think Elige, Fallen, there's a lot of background on it as well. I think it's gonna be an interesting, very interesting matchup. And I think it's going to come down to very small details. Even though Complexity is playing great, I think it's not an easy series at all. It's kind of like a domestic matchup as well. They know each other very well. They played against each other a bunch of times. So I think it really comes down to this one. But Mouse for sure will make it. And on paper, again, Complexity, because of the way they're playing, they should as well.
I think the fact that it's best of one as well almost
Oof.
gives you that feeling that it's not as just like clear cut as it should be for Complexity against Fura, considering how well Complexity are doing. So yeah, definitely a very interesting matchup there as well. I just want to ask you about Fura because we will talk about them in the event that they're playing, which is BetBoom Dacha next week or the week after. But how have you seen their transition to CS2 so far, Peacemaker?
I haven't seen many changes from CS:GO to CS2. I think they are the only thing that I saw as a change was that suddenly they apparently they're feeling way more comfortable in Ancient, which has been a nightmare for them for the past couple months. It has been a map that they lost a lot, and then I think they put a lot of work into it. And but I don't think it has anything to do with CS2. The map itself hasn't changed that much, other than of small minor changes. So I think the way that Fallen controls the team and the way that he approaches the game is not going to change based on whatever CS:GO, CS2. He's very like methodical in terms of like how to develop map control, how to default, what is important, everybody be on the same page, And like it's very, it comes down to a lot of like the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are never gonna change whether you play CS2 or CS:GO. So I think that's what they're aiming for right now. People making sure that they don't miss their nades, that they know each other roles, that they're capable of feeling for each other. I think that's the main thing. But the biggest challenge for Furia ever since they brought this roster together has been Maple, right? Like they are struggling Maple wise. It's been a nightmare for them to like, and that I feel like that's has always been one of the biggest weak points from at least the fallen rosters, including mine with him and Imperial in 2022, is that like back there we did have one or two maps that was our strongest ones on Overpass and Inferno. But right now, I don't really see a map from Furia that we would look into them and say like, well, this is the map. Like they should be picking this. They should win this no matter what against Complexity. In the other hand, for example, when you look at Complexity, like there's two or three maps that you could look into Complexity Smapu and say like, well, this should be their pick. If they have the chance to pick this against anyone in this group, they should be the favorites, or they have a very strong chance of even beating Mouse, for example. So I think that's the biggest challenge for Furia right now. It's just their map pool, the way that they're working in the maps is just heavy, inconsistent all across the board. And individually speaking, like I also think there's something that is hard to understand in this roster in terms of like Shallow's performance compared to Art. Like, should Shallow be playing the roles that he is right now? There's a lot of questions about that in the Brazilian scene because everybody knows the potential he has, but he's not kind of he is being sacrificed in this roster. He could play those roles, but it's not the roles that I would think that it would benefit him the most. And then the other hand, you have Art, who is heavy, inconsistent, individually speaking. At some point when they brought this roster, he was the best performer. Like at the beginning and when they played their first event, and then ever since he's been dropping as well. So there's a lot of question marks, like in terms of the individual performances and especially map wise. I think they're in a bad spot coming into this one for sure.
I mean, they have two events that they're going to be playing across 2 weeks, so it's going to be very stressful for them, I imagine. And also traveling as well, considering they got to
Yeah.
go to Finland and then over to, I think it's in Dubai for Dhaka. So it's going to be very, very tough for them. Brandon and Hawker, I'd just like to get your takes on Elisa. On like, do you think this will be the first CS2 event that Maus will win?
It's a good chance, right? I think this is the opportunity for Mouse to win an event. Like this is the easiest run they're gonna have. So grab it with both hands, I'd say, and try your best. I feel like this is the most opportunity they're gonna have. So yeah, I agree. To answer your question, literally yes. I also though I want to derail the conversation completely because I want to get Hawker's opinion as well, so we can double up the question, Hawker. I think this is such a good opportunity for Gamer Legion to bounce back because I feel like they were a little bit kind of hard done by in Jonkoping. I feel like hopefully they're feeling better now as well because I know there was a sickness as well, which can obviously suck and
Yeah.
you can't really take any time off. So I think the way that Volt's playing has been fantastic. I'd like to see Kios just get a little bit better individually since the transition move over from Go to CS2. But I think that you take a look at the group, take a look at the roster changes. I would not be surprised to see Gamer Legion in that playoff spot.
Yeah, I think they should be. I really love the decision to bring Snacks in. It's just given so much more life to this team, in my opinion. Not just because Snacks individually is still really solid, but also just the team look like they have more structure behind them. I feel like Snacks, we all know he's always had that ability to get in behind people, and he's actually using that really well when calling in most of the rounds, which I think is really good to see. Um, they the only thing I will say with Gamer Legion is they've had quite a few tournaments where like the vibe I get from the team is they always feel like they've been like hard done by a little bit. Like at Sydney, for example, they lost against BetBoom and then they got knocked out by FaZe. I know I think was it Cologne or Katowice? They very nearly made playoffs. I think it was Cologne where they got against Cloud9 for a spot in the
Yeah,
playoffs and then they
yeah.
lost. Like I do get the vibe sometimes that they're a team that are like, oh, well, we were so close to making playoffs, but we didn't make it. Oh, we're so unlucky. And I don't want that to carry over into this event, really. Like, I want them to be looking at this group and saying, We should be making it through. Yes, there's Fnatic, but they've had loads of roster moves. To be honest, even Ents, you can make a case for saying with Glaive coming in, you should be able to take the fight to them. So that's the main thing I want to see. Gamer Legion just actually coming in with like real positivity. Because like you said, Volt, I think, has been playing better. I still think there's another level Volt can get to. I think he's really talented. He's just not been consistent enough. But there's like they should be making it through this group, and I hope that they just come in feeling like that's what they need to do here.
The one thing I saw as well about Volt is he's changed his flag on HLTV.
But yeah, what the hell,
He's done a
man?
Mantu on us. We've
Bro,
lost
he
another
played in the
one.
show match for Team UK, and I guess we lost over at Sydney, and now he's like, all right, screw it, I'm not
He
UK
doesn't-
anymore.
He doesn't want to be
Screw
part
this
of
guy.
it.
Yeah.
We hope Gamer Legion lose now.
You know what else was weird? Quickly, Gamer Legion were like saving on CT pistol in a few games.
I saw this.
They just
Yeah.
full save, and then
saw
like
that as well.
and if you lose the pistol, like you still don't really have enough money to do anything good with that extra money. I feel like I don't know.
I thought it was T side, but I could be wrong.
No, they were doing
But
it CT as well.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I asked I was like asking some of my friends, I was like, why do you think they're doing this? The only explanation we could come up with was it's kind of a double-edged sword because you're effectively guaranteeing Galils and AKs in the second round. But at the end of the day, you're setting yourself up to fail in a way because you're not investing everything you could in the pistol. So it's one of those where it's like you value having Galils and AKs more in that second round, regardless whether you win or lose the pistol, trying to turn it around. And the only kind of way I could look at it in favor of that is if you win that second round, despite the outcome of the first, you're immediately doing damage to the CT economy. And it's hard for the CTs to try and recover once the economy is kind of going against you. So I understand the thought process and the philosophy behind it. And maybe that was just a one event thing. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to see tomorrow if they do it for Elisa.
I mean, there's also the case from where I've been playing CS2. Like, if you force up Galils and AKs, like that is a lot better of a buy than what CT can get in most cases. So maybe it's just an advantage there.
Yeah. I sort of like I can see the logic on T, but on CT they did it like 2 or 3 times, and the only thing we could think was that they're really scared of that T second round force, so they want extra money if they win the pistol for the second round, or like they're scared
Yeah.
of that CT like immediately getting reset. But yeah, it was interesting. I don't know, it's fun to see teams experiment. I don't think we really got interviews with them, so it was a shame. I'll maybe try and DM Ash or something, but yeah, we'd love to get to the bottom of it.
The last UK player on Gamer Legion. Get his,
Exactly.
Get his thoughts on it. I mean,
he'll probably change his flag too. I don't even know if he's got another flag he can go to. But
they were all abandoning it.
Yeah.
It's a real shame that Volt has swapped to Romanian and now he's performing better than when he had the UK flag.
Oh, it's poor, isn't
Maybe
it?
we all need to do it. That'll up our performances across the board. Was it C9 as well that were doing like a weird not buying anything at the very start? Is it them?
Yeah, I think like maybe BetBoom experimented with it as well. Like there's some teams that seem to be actually experimenting with that, which, hey, listen, I like experimentation. I like it.
Oh yeah.
I'm here for it.
I knew you were gonna make that weird, Brandon.
I'm always
Wait a
down
minute,
to try
I
new
just-
things, Brandon. What can I say?
Yeah, all right. Good to know.
I think Complexity, the only other team, just while Peacemaker's changing his headset, that I think are worth like talking about as maybe contenders. I think it's a shame for them that they're in the same group as Mouse, but maybe that sets up for them in the final against Mouse. I think it's them or Ents really, even with the changes on Ents, just based on the contenders of the tournament. I think they got quite unlucky against FaZe. I mean, I say unlucky, maybe they played it very poorly. I did see a clip of because they lost back-to-back 1v4s on Ancient, and I think that really disrupted them from doing anything else on Ancient on the third map as well, the series. There was a clip I saw of Horzerk's scout, and
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
and it was pretty much on him on Carrigan in after Carrigan had made it into was it a 1v2 at that point?
Donut. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks on. It looks so on him, and it just doesn't connect. And I saw Forrest comment, like reply to the tweet, and it was like, "Yeah, this happened in a major final for us as well, and just something needs to be fixed." But like, if that is the case, like that is such a pivotal point in the game. Losing 1v4 is horrible. Back to back, that can break you completely. So I do feel very much for complexity. But Falk, have you got any thoughts on how you think they might um, be at this event?
It's interesting because when they went back to playing online after Sydney, they actually struggled a bit. So there is part of me that almost wonders, like, are you going to have the same amount of prep for this tournament? Just coming off of
You guys hear
the
me?
full final.
Yeah,
We hear
we can
you.
hear you
We hear
back.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess the question for me for complexity is, it's only been a few days since the full final. I think there's a chance that they're not as prepared for this. And you know what? Like Peacemaker said, like we've seen Complexity Furia before actually be a very close match for whatever reason. Seems like maybe Fallen's got a good read on them. So I think if they don't like come into this fully ready and fully focused, there is a chance that Complexity could have some struggles here. I don't think it's certain for me that they're going to be like making it straight to the final against Mouse or whatever. I think there's a very real chance that they have some issues or get upset at some points.
That's a very interesting point, actually. Maybe not being as prepared as they would like to be, but they are definitely one of the teams at the minute in CS2 that are performing very well. So we'll just end off the conversation on Elisa before we move on. Just want to get your guys' takes on who is your favorite to win. Brandon, we'll start with you, but maybe we'll hear Miles across the board.
Um, yeah, it's between Mouse or Complexity, in my opinion. I can tell you my fantasy team if you
Okay,
want.
yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Sure.
My, I
All
was
right.
I was struggling so much of it because complexity and Mouse are in the same group.
I don't care about that. I've
Okay.
gone Elige. I've gone Elige JT,
Yep.
Shui Exertion, and Kios because Kios was cheap.
Okay.
Okay.
They're all in on the highballers.
Mm,
Yeah, you gotta go hard or go home, and
wow.
I'm upset. Actually, sorry again, I've ruined your whole segment. But I for Blast, I got this is my fantasy team for Blast. By the way, um, I got Rops, Twists, Mezzy, Apex in there, and I got top 27%. Like, come on, what's up with that?
Who was your
Like,
fifth?
there's 4 finalists. No, my fifth was Esotag. I didn't want to
Oh.
mention it because I know you don't
Yeah,
like.
I
I know
did
you
as
like.
well.
It's all right.
Right.
My team was
And
double nip, double complex. No, maybe it was
all
horrible.
right, no, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
Double nip. Come on, man. I know you like him, but what?
Oh,
What are you
the
doing?
season's coming to an end. I thought I'm gonna gamble hard, so I think I went resin config.
Archie, who do
Yeah.
you think is going to win, Elisa?
I hope complexity. I really like complexity at the minute. I think their team's good. I'm a big fan of Horsug based on his time in Dignitas. So a long time ago now, we're thinking all the way back to Flashpoint, which is probably a name most people haven't heard in quite some time. But I hope complexity, but I think yeah, Miles has got to be favorite for sure. How about you, Hawker?
Yeah, it's Miles for me. Especially because Yimpat has been so good, man. Like I can't believe how he got so good so quick. He looks like a veteran now, and he's he's so young. I actually don't understand. His decisions are great. He's probably the second best player on this team right now, behind Frozen, which is mad to say, but he's just given them an extra element that I think makes them a class above everyone here for me.
How about you, Peacemaker? You reckon the Furia upset could happen and they spur them all the way to the final?
Not right now. Honestly, I think it's gonna be a hard one. I think complexity. It's actually crazy, right? Like how well they're performing, and there was just one roster change they made, bringing Elige, which is super impactful. But it's kind of crazy the amount of impact that this roster change made into the roster. Like for sure, like Elige has a lot to do with it, and there's no other way around it, right? They haven't changed the coach, they haven't changed the IGL. It was just one guy coming with a lot of experience and then suddenly they start doing really well. Like we, for sure, like it has a lot to do with the stuff that he experienced in Liquid, and for sure, like bringing a lot of ideas. Elisa has been a very vocal player as well, and that's probably like one of the reasons why finally JT has a secondary caller who is super capable of helping him, controlling the team, bringing up ideas and stuff. I think that's really nice because I don't really see that coming from the coach. I think the coach is more like, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. He seems to be a way more like a, kind of like a dad type of coach, other than, very strategic coach. So I think Elish coming to the team, I think it helped a lot. And right now, yeah, my favorite has to be Mouse. And the only way I see Mouse losing this is if we go back to that scenario where maybe, Frozen is being poached by FaZe, and then people figure it out, and then suddenly there's some kind of a drama inside the team. If that's the case, other than that, if they're all set together on the same page, I really have a hard time believing that Mouse will lose this event, especially since Hawka said, like, with the numbers that Yimpat is putting, and then like just this roster in general, like they have a very good IGL, like a prospect that has came into the scene out of, like, not nowhere, but like nobody expected Shubi to become as mature and as good as IGL as he is. Then they have Frozen and a very solid player, Yimpat, putting up the numbers he is, and then you have a great Opper who is a little bit inconsistent, I would say. Like he can obviously fail in some matches, but overall he's also been doing pretty well. And then Exertion, who a year ago we were talking about him as one of the best players in this roster prior to Yimpat, and Exertion was one of the best performers at the major in Rio. So I mean, this roster is just insane. So I have a hard time believing that after all the experience together that they will lose this event. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Across the board, then we have Mouse. You mentioned Torsey there. I just immediately my eyes glanced to Brandon. So it's just I just can't help it. And notice
Nice.
that anytime anyone says it, the lookalike is just it's too uncanny. Um, but we've got Gamer Legion that will be traveling to BetBoom Dacha as well as FURIA. So just like to briefly mention a bit more about FURIA because MIBR will be there. So Peacemaker, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. There's only two placements in the ranking separating these two right now. For you, who is the better team in Brazil?
Well, that one could get me into trouble. No, but for real, no. I mean, I've said it before on my stream, and I think it's pretty clear that I think the whole Brazilian scene agrees with me at this point that MIBR is for sure a better team at the moment. The thing is that when Brazilian team, it's kind of like when these local matchups happens, anything could happen, honestly, just because like there's a lot on the line, and then people know each other really well. So if we ever see a MIBR Furia game and eventually Furia ends up winning, that wouldn't really surprise me, just because it's a local matchup. But other than that, like in terms of how they approach the game, the individuals, role wise and map pool wise, and I mean, at this point right now, it's pretty clear for me that MIBR is just the better team, and if they continue to improve as they are right now, as they're doing. And for me, it doesn't really matter that they haven't won the last event, which would be very beneficial for them coming into the major, right? It's I think people underestimate how important these smaller events, such as, as Hawka said, like having a tournament in Jonkoping and then the CCT Online Finals. All these events is what brings confidence for some of those teams. And yeah, you could argue that, for example, for G2 playing the CCTs of the world, it's a tournament that they might win and they should win. But even though they have this amount of experience as a team and in the players, it would be great for them prior to the major winning an event like that, just as it is for the MIBRs of the world, for Furia as well, who struggles to finally believe they can actually win something. And I think that has been the biggest nightmare for them ever since they made this roster. It's just that they are incapable of lifting a trophy, and every time they get close to it, it's kind of like the mental block that some of these teams had back in the days with Liquid, Astralis, that they always made it to semis and then they end up, or grand finals, and they just keep losing and losing. And I think it's really exhausting for them at the moment. So um, but for sure, MIBR is a lot closer of lifting a trophy than Furia is right now.
And I think Furia have. I mean, I think the groups are actually fairly even for this event. But Furia, they're going to be alongside Astralis, Spirit, and VP. I know Brown is going to have some points to talk about Spirit, so we'll get onto that in a little bit. But VP, Maui did his predictions videos for us where he goes over all the teams at the different events at Blast, and he mentioned VP in that because prior to Jonkoping and to Blast, he said that from a results-based analysis, VP had to be number 2 based on the fact that they'd won Rubet, I believe. They made another finals appearance or semi-finals appearance at Thunderpick. And I mean, they probably should have performed a lot better at Jonkoping than they did. But Hawker, I'd like to get your take on VP because you were there in Jonkoping and just how you feel this team is and if there's any highlights on this team, because you mentioned players not really performing as you expected whilst at the event, but Flit's been performing extremely well.
Yeah, Flit was still really good. I think he's really come into his own in CS2. He was always a really good player, but I feel like on VP it was sometimes kind of hard for riflers to really stand out. And Flit, I think, is finally actually doing that now, which is nice. They still play the same way. Surprisingly, I can't believe Norbert was so good. He's also been someone who apparently is finding CS2 really enjoyable based on the interviews, and he was actually insane at Jonkoping. He was like really good. So that's maybe something that's exciting because I think a lot of people probably just think of Norbert as like, okay, he's there to be the glue guy, and he's not really going to win you rounds. But he was winning them rounds. It was mainly just Fame and Mir I was disappointed by, especially Mir because I thought he was doing pretty well online. Didn't really show up there at Jonkoping, so hopefully that changes. But I guess that's also the tough thing with picking out a team's results from online because it can be very different to LAN and VP, they were doing very well online. I think there's no shame in losing to Monty, is the thing I will say, because Monty were playing very well at that tournament. So I'm glad they get another event to show us what they're capable of. I think they should be able to make it out of their group. And yeah, it's mainly just hopefully I want to see Mir and Fame performing again because I think if they perform, then they can have a really good run here.
I think VP as well, we spoke about them a lot when the release of CS2 happened as our predicted team that was going to do well based on their playstyle. So Peacemaker, I just want to ask you, we haven't got matchups yet for this event. I think it should be Spirit VP based on the rankings and then FURIA Astralis. But if VP and FURIA do find each other in this, do you think that their playstyles are still very like opposites?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's but I've done a couple matches from Spirit. Like they play just a bunch of these online events, and yeah, I'm also a big fan of the roster, especially Dunk, and obviously and Art Frost. I think they are great additions to the team for sure. The biggest question for me is just like it's again a kind of local matchup where they know each other really well, and it's been tough games in the past as well. I think in Rubet they even lost to VP, right? It was a 2-1 game from what I've seen here. It wasn't that close as I expected. VP kind of crushed them in the last two maps on Overpass and Mirage. But, um, it's another opportunity for Spirit now, a bit more mature as a roster with Donk in the team and all of that. I think that it could be an interesting series. And I mean, it's another in its own land, right? Right now, this would be
Yes,
on
yeah, yeah.
land. It's a completely different environment as well. So I think that's the biggest challenge for a young upcoming team on Spirit to be able to deliver on land. There's gonna be like it's still new for players like Dong and Art Frost to perform on land, maybe with an audience, and not playing at your home with your own PC and own chair and feeling 100% comfortable. So I think that could play a factor here on VP. It's just like I think this will be a lot closer than it was last time they played. That's for sure.
Brandon, I know you've been edging to speak about Donk for the entire podcast. It's the one thing you
No,
love to do
I
every single time we get on it. So go
yeah,
on.
it's a bit that we bring him up every podcast, but I'm not just sat here waiting to
I
pounce
feel like you are.
talking about Donk. No, all I'm learning this podcast, to be honest, is that me and Peacemaker have the same opinions. So I feel quite honored, really, that I
Nice.
can. So I'm quite happy. Like that's a little bit of an ego boost for me. I think I think VP is Spirit's kryptonite, and I feel like that's just because they've got way more experience. I will say though that last time these guys were on land, Spirit did beat them, and they ended up winning the parry party. Um, but I feel like you're right, Peacemaker. Like this team VP is they've just got way more experience. They know how to travel. They can go from event to event, and they can do it consistently. So I feel like VP should be making out this group. I feel like the interesting discussion point for VP for me, we'll touch on Spirit in a moment, but I was actually really surprised that they picked up Mir. And just because the way that Mir plays, he creates so much space on T side, but it kind of the way he gets the space and the way he gathers it in the mid round is completely anti what VP like to do and how they set themselves up. So that was an interesting blend to watch, and it's obviously working a lot online, but maybe LAN in person it hasn't quite meshed as well as they would have hoped. I don't know why that is. By the way, if anyone has any kind of input, that would be really cool to hear because I don't have a clue why it would be different online compared to LAN. But that is definitely one thing I have noticed, especially when watching Mir specifically.
I have no
Uh,
take.
I have no
Okay.
take. Like I just think it's like a. It hasn't been that long ever since they brought him as well. And as you said really well, like Mir used to play in a completely different style in his past team. So I think it's just a period that he needs, you know, as you said, it's very interesting to see, but I still think that, for example, in this particular series against Spirit, right, Mir was the lowest rating in in this
Yeah.
series. He didn't play really well, and I just think that it's a matter of like time until they put the pieces together and Mir understands like the system that James runs, which is also very unique, right? The way that James likes to play and approach things,
Yeah.
like it's. I'm sure that for a player like Mir, who's been have played like with different type of systems, IGLs. I'm sure it's not an easier time. Like he needs time to get used to it, and yeah,
I'll tell you who Mir has played with a lot, and that's Chopper. So you can obviously have some mid round stuff. He could probably say to James, probably Chopper likes to call this, so watch out for
true.
this. And that would be interesting to kind of watch that dynamic. Things about Spirit that I want to mention, completely off topic again, but at the time of recording this episode, it was Art Frost's birthday yesterday. So happy birthday, mate. Hope you had a good one. Avid listener of the podcast, obviously. I really like the fact that Magix is putting up the numbers quite a lot as well. Been very impressed with how Magix has been performing on this team because we speak about Donk, Zontix, Art Frost, but I feel like Magix has really been going under the radar recently, and himself and Chopper have actually been putting up a lot of good numbers, which I think is essential for the team to thrive. The fact that everyone is being consistent. So Spirit have unlocked that in their wheelhouse now. If everyone is being consistent, then that is a very scary team to face at LAN, let me tell you.
Yeah, Magis kind of gives me those like D-Har vibes of people not really appreciating just
Yeah.
how much
Yeah,
he does for the team. I remember back when Spirit were had Dexter on the lineup back in Rio, and they were making these consistent playoffs, and that guy was just under the radar constantly. It's such a good player. Um, Another team in this group we've spoke about is Astralis. I don't think there's too much to say about them other than I think we're excited to see them play, regardless of all the way it's gone down. Um, but Group A, a team that we haven't spoken about because MIBR in there, Gamer Legion, Cloud9. I think Cloud9 and MIBR based on ranking should be a matchup. The other one should be Gamer Legion and BetBoom. I've not spoke too much about BetBoom, but Brandon, you seem to be our CIS specialist. So have you got any takes on BetBoom and how they've been playing?
They've actually not been doing amazingly recently online.
they
They've
just
kind
lost to
of
Gotcha Academy, by the way.
yeah,
Just kind
that's
of on
that's
the
what I wanted to
radar,
bring
right?
up. Yeah, they lost to Gucci Academy. I feel like a lot of people will be quick to like catastrophize these results. And what I will say is this is a team that is just again, it's a very familiar theme here that we're going for. It's a team that has just come together. They've not been around that long, so they're going to have these inconsistent results. But it is kind of outrageous that they lost to Gucci Academy, is what I will say, considering how well they performed in Sydney.
Yeah, Sydney, they came from like open qualifiers, which is wild to see how far they went. Like, I don't know if we've ever had a team come from open qualifiers to win an event of like that caliber. I mean,
It's
um,
rare, yeah.
yeah, like I'm sure if it happened, or if happened, it'd be like quite a big talking point, a big something that teams would talk about quite a lot. But yeah, it doesn't seem to have happened very much. They did win CCT Central Europe Season 8. I think that was prior to Sydney, but they played at Parry Please as well, and they struggled a bit there as well. So yeah, they've got a lot of firepower though on this team. So
They do.
definitely,
It's just
yeah.
about whether Sorry, it's just about
No, no,
whether
go.
like Nafany can control it all at once. Like that's the ultimate thing. And where that's going to get chaotic the most isn't going to be in the beginning of the round. It's going to be in the middle of the round where you've made a game plan and say something goes a little bit wrong. Say you've gone to take, I don't know, outside on nuke, for example, and you've been absolutely rolled. It's like, okay, what's your reaction out of your lobby players? And if you've got a lot of firepower, but you've also got a lot of players that that will just go and take space, maybe without communicating, or maybe just saying, okay, guys, we've lost outside. Let's maybe take ramp, for example. Let's just go together. And you've got players that will just go and do it and be overextensive and be over aggressive. That's where you're going to get caught out. And that's where you're going to give over these favorable gunfights to CTs. So I think that's where the struggle is going to be for Nafany in this project. And that's going to be a process. That's not going to be just a quick like fix. That's a long term. You've got to work that through, and you've got to really change the way some of these players approach the game, because you can be stuck in that mindset, especially if you're an aggressive rifler. You can be stuck in your way of thinking for quite a while, I think, and it will take a while for you to kind of get out of those habits and make new ones.
I have a take on this as well about
Yep.
BetBoom. I don't know if could be the case, but I have a feeling that Nafany is used to playing against the type of teams that they did play against in Sydney, especially under that type of environments, right? And he's proven in that environment. He hasn't lifted many trophies, but still, what they're able to accomplish with the old roster, Gambit, and all of that is truly inspiring for all these upcoming teams. And I think that it was a massive surprise the level that they were able to show in Sydney for sure. They could have beaten Mouse, right? In that series. They went to OT on first map. They ended up losing, but still, like this could have been easily a 2-0 for BetBoom, and then who knows what they would be able to accomplish there. And then ever since that happened, maybe like I just have a feeling that for example, when you have a team like that with young players and you're still developing stuff, I think it could be one of those moments where they thought that they were already pretty good, and then they go into online, and then they have mixed results, and then they start questioning whether things are going in the right direction. Should we make changes, like not changes in the roster, but changes in the game? And then they start to like kind of overthink things a little bit too much, and then suddenly they're playing online against weaker opponents, and maybe that could be a factor. For example, them losing to Gucci Academy, surely, like if that match is played on land, I would have a hard time believing that they would lose. But still, not taking anything away from Gucci Academy, but I think that this could be a factor that they're just inconsistent when it comes to online, and they're maybe overthinking things a little bit too much right now. Maybe the result they had in Sydney was over what they are actually capable of delivering right now, and it's just the state they are as a team, and it's still like too young, right? They're top 4 team in the world on HLTV, but it's still like they haven't really done much in terms of like results and trophies or anything to prove to me that they deserve to be like on this ranking consistently right now. So I think this is another great opportunity that they're going to be playing against teams and players that Nafan is way more used to playing against. So maybe this could play a factor again and again. It's on land, so we will see. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see a little bit of what we saw in Sydney in this roster, especially coming from such a massive loss online. I think it's kind of like a reality check, that okay, like we lost this, like we shouldn't have lost, like what the hell is going on? We need to step up, and then they have some time until BetBoom Dacha to put down the work and maybe surprise us once again in Dubai. Yeah.
Yeah, and with this tournament as well, it's quite a fortunate thing for them as well that it's run by their the betting
Yeah.
sponsor, because they get their place there. They get these invites to events, which is quite nice for them because they always get to get these opportunities to compete. I was just looking at the format as well. It seems the exact same as Elisa, so should be best of ones in the openers, um, which could throw through things into different loops. But what I want to ask as well, just to kind of close off the podcast here, I don't think there's too much else. We covered pretty much all the teams. But do you think that best of one should still exist with MR12? It's just everyone, whoever wants to jump on. Not heard from you in a while,
No.
Hawker.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Really, probably not. I think like we probably have quick enough BO3s now that it's not an issue. That we should be having BO1s. It the thing is, I'm probably slightly more. I think I look at it slightly more from like the viewer's perspective than the players, because I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day. So I still sort of understand why you maybe want your opening game in a group to be a BO1, but it is very dangerous, right? Like if you have one or two upsets, it can kind of ruin the whole tournament. And then if you're a fan and two of your favorite teams are fighting in the lower brackets straight away, it's probably not for the best. So yeah, probably just you probably can just make it BO3s really. Like we should have the time now to make it full BO3s, right?
Yeah, they aren't that long anymore. Brandon, I heard you come in with a very quick no. Does it go much
Yeah,
further than that, or is it just no?
not really. I just think BO1s, obviously. The thing is, the argument for BO1s is people will go, well, if you're one of the best teams in the world, then surely you should be able to win a best of one, and it doesn't matter what format it is. But I feel like BO1s can be really random, and um, sure, if you make the game random and you take away the map off a top team, then you got to kind of get your credit for that. But I feel like you're at the point now where we're MR12, and I I don't see why we should have BO1s. I think it should just be BO3s. But that is me obviously talking, having never played the game professionally, having never coached the game professionally. So that's only just from like, I love CS and I want to see more CS. And I feel like we'd have probably fewer upsets if there were BO3s. But does that make things exciting? Does that make things too predictable? I don't know. You can't see both arguments for it. But for me, I'd rather have BO3s.
I have a take on this as well from a coach perspective. I think the thing about BO1 right now is just the way the economy functions, right? It's challenging. The pistols now matters a lot, and has a huge impact in how the game develops. And depending on your decisions, like I've seen a couple teams, especially in these online events, they are. I'm gonna go very analytical here, like in terms of like the way the game is being played. I saw a lot of teams are still force buying on City after losing pistol, or whenever they have the chance to try and break the T's economy, especially online. I feel like people are taking more risks on that, or in games where there's not much on the line, so it's kind of like group stage. If we lose, we're still alive. It's kind of whatever. I see people taking those chances. And when it comes to land, BO1, and a important event like this with a little prize pool on the line, I have a hard time seeing like people, BO1s, if people commit those decisions and they end up losing, and then suddenly the other team gets momentum going, blah blah, and by the time you see you already lost the half, and maybe we're talking about a map like Anubis, or maybe I don't know, Nuke, for example, where you start CT and then the T's start like trying to force buy way too much or make terrible decisions economy wise, and then suddenly by the time you see it becomes even more random, the results. But it's also because of the fact that how the game is working right now, the economy as it is. So I would be fine with having BL1s if the economy gets changed, and then we have something different in terms of the economy of the game. So perhaps like instead of having like the first loss bonus, I mean that's a very deep conversation that we could have, right? We can have another time in terms of like the economy of the game. But if there is a change with like the first loss bonus going from 1,400 to 1,900, like in the first loss bonus, then the first round of the bonus, then maybe I could see an argument that yeah, we can maybe try to experience BO1s for a little while, see how it develops with this new economy. But as it is right now, I'm not a fan. No, I think it brings too much randomness into the game, and it's very easy for a underdog team to just upset a top team right now, and then suddenly we have those, yeah, it kind of ruins the event a little bit.
I have a question as well about BO1s from a coaching perspective, and
Mm.
like when you go to decide on what map you want to play, would you ever almost avoid certain maps that are quite heavily CT sided because that could swing momentum in someone's favor if they get to start CT side? It might be more difficult to come back. Would you ever purposely avoid something like a nuke or previously in the past like a I don't know train or overpass?
It depends on what team you're playing against. If you are the underdog and you have the opportunity to play maps like that, it could also play into your favor, right? That you play a nuke, for example, and then for example, if it's knife for sides, then even better. You suddenly win a knife and then you get CT. It could play a factor. Also, I think it benefits more like the underdog teams over the top teams, for sure. Purely based on the veto as well. Like you get the chance to remove three of your weakest maps and maybe three of the strongest maps from the opponents. So, but I never been in a scenario where I avoided a map just purely because it was a best of one. It was more like I would take into consideration the whole picture of it. You know, who I'm playing against, if they're good on the map or not. Like for example, back in the days, if I had to play Astralis, then surely, even though actually this happened, right? Like in heroic, when I was coaching Heroic, we used to play Astralis, and we played them in best of ones as well. And it was back in the days when Astralis was one of the best teams in the world on Nuke. And even though we had a great Nuke, it was just one of those scenarios where I would go to Snappi and say like, "Hey, do we really want to play Nuke against Astralis? If you can just afford to, yeah, I know it's a good map for us, but if you can just afford to maybe find a middle ground where we take them slightly out of their comfortable zone, and then we also play according to our strengths, maybe we have a higher chance." There's always those mind games as well that plays into this decision. Yeah.
Brandon, Hawker, any more questions you want to throw Peacemaker's way before we round out the episode?
I think I'm all good.
Um, yeah, I'll ask a very generic one that you've probably heard about 100 times.
Okay.
But when when it comes to coaching, obviously, like for some people, they're obviously like maybe trying to get into the space or maybe trying to start coaching for the first time. With the transition from CS:GO to CS2, what do you think has been what's like the key takeaway for you? What do you think is the one key thing players and teams need to focus on coming through and swapping games?
Well, I think that a lot of play time together for sure. I mean, the game is new. There's a lot to learn together, and I think just because of the way the game is right now, there's so much innovation that you can bring into the maps. Like the smoke change, for example. Now you can blow the smoke and find gaps on it and whatever. Like there's so much you can do. And I think right now at this stage of the game, the more work you put into this as a team and try to, like, honestly, I hate the aspect of like people trying to copy each other way too much. Like of course, like right now you look at FaZe and you wanna like, "Ah, I want to play like FaZe, I want to copy everything." But right now you have such a big opportunity to like invent something or try to bring something new. And I think if I have a team, for the teams out there, I think of course they should take the good aspects out of the phase, out of mouse sports and all of that. But there is a massive opportunity right here to invent new things, to try different stuff. Because I think that at this moment, there is a chance that you might surprise. There is a chance that you might do great, and people I mean, a lot of playtime and a lot of studying for sure, because there's a lot of content out there as well from multiple YouTube channels, multiple matches that we've seen already. I mean, it's just a matter of like, especially studying and reviewing a lot as well, because that's something that I know that the teams and players in general that are a little bit lazy in terms of like wanting to review mistakes and all of that. And I think that plays a huge and important card here, especially in a new game where there's a lot of random stuff that's going to happen. Now it's even more important that you actually spend time reviewing, trying to fix mistakes, because they will simply happen because the game is new. There's a lot of random stuff happening, and it's important that you kind of go through that, because going through that process is what's going to make you stable and a successful team. Yeah.
I think that's very insightful. Of almost like don't be afraid to fail in these
Yeah.
early stages of CS2. Yeah.
Yes. For sure.
So yeah, this has been episode 9 now of the Pinnacle Stack. Peacemaker, it's been an absolute pleasure, and just let everyone know who's watching the video where they can find you: YouTube, Twitch. Let everyone know what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, find me on Twitter, Twitter/Peacemaker, and also on Twitch. I've been streaming quite a lot, doing broadcast and covering events. and also covering a little bit. I'm trying to give like a little tips as well. Since I'm not working as a coach right now, I can jump into that world a little bit and give my ideas of what I think is going to happen. But I've been covering CS a lot. It's my passion, and yeah, thanks for watching. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Hope we catch up another time because it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, no, it's been great. We greatly appreciate your takes on the scene and everything with all your experience as well. It's yeah, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And Brandon Hawker, thank you once again for joining us. And we'll see you for episode 10 when the year is slowly coming to an end, less tournaments. But yeah, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for watching.